Sometimes the worst kind of betrayal comes disguised as kindness. I was only 19 when I first met him. Fresh out of school, desperate for a job, hungry to prove myself. The world looked big, complicated, and slightly tilted against people like me, shy, unsure, with more dreams than experience. When I saw the job posting pinned on the college notice board, I took it as a sign. Personal assistant needed. Flexible hours. Decent pay. Creative work environment. It sounded perfect. Almost too perfect. His name was Arian. Mid-30s. Charismatic in a way that filled the entire room when he walked in. He wasn't just good-looking, he was magnetic. People leaned toward him without realizing it. He had this way of speaking that made everything sound like a secret, like you were being invited into a world others didn't even know existed. I remember our first meeting. I walked into his office. Well, more like a renovated studio space with bean bags, mood lights, and floor-to-ceiling windows, and immediately felt out of place in my second-hand shirt and worn-out sneakers. "You must be Ria," he said, flashing a smile. "Come in, don't be shy. Sit. Tell me why I should hire you." I stammered something about being hardworking, eager to learn, good with people. My voice cracked. My hands were sweaty. But he listened patiently, nodded thoughtfully, and said, "I like your honesty. That's rare these days." And just like that, I was hired. At first, the job felt like a dream. He asked me to help manage his schedule, sort through emails, take notes during meetings. He ran a small media company that worked with influencers and brands. The work was fast-paced, unpredictable, exciting. I was learning things I had never imagined: branding strategies, pitch decks, content workflows. I stayed late willingly, wanting to impress him, wanting to earn my place. He praised me often. "You're a fast learner. You think on your feet. I can count on you." Every time he said those words, something bloomed inside me. I didn't have much back home, just a father who drank too much and a mother who worked too hard. No one in my family had ever worked in an office. No one had sat across from big clients or helped close deals. I felt like I was becoming someone. Slowly, he started trusting me with more. "Can you take this client meeting for me? Would you mind helping out with the weekend shoot? Ria, I need you to stay a little later tonight. Just till we finish the campaign brief." I never said no. He gave me attention, validation, sometimes even personal compliments. "You have a natural instinct," he'd say. "You remind me of myself when I was your age." Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with an expression I couldn't read, half admiration, half calculation, but I brushed it off. I wanted to believe in the story I was telling myself, that I mattered, that I was becoming indispensable, that I was part of something bigger. And for a while, it worked. He started calling me his right hand. Introduced me to important clients as the soul of this place. When we were at events, he kept me close, always whispering directions in my ear, giving me cues, treating me like an equal. People began to recognize me, reach out to me directly. I felt powerful, important, like I belonged. But slowly, the cracks began to show. It started with small things. He'd forget to pay me on time. Sorry, just remind me tomorrow. Or he'd ask me to pay for things out of pocket with the promise of reimbursement, taxi rides, coffee for clients, props for a shoot. Keep the receipts, he'd say. I'll transfer everything by the end of the week. The money never came. At first, I didn't mind. I told myself it was temporary, that I was investing in my future. That loyalty would pay off eventually. But then the tasks started changing. He'd call at odd hours. 11 p.m., 1 a.m., even 3 sometimes. Hey, can you come over? I need help with some edits. I'd show up, half asleep, and he'd be there, barefoot, music playing, coffee in hand, smiling like it was completely normal. He'd talk for hours, not just about work but about life, pain, ambition, heartbreak. I sat there listening, feeling like I had been let into a private world. But then he started getting angry. If I didn't respond fast enough to messages, why are you ignoring me? If I questioned a decision, I don't need attitude from my own team. If I looked tired, you're not cut out for this, are you? Each outburst was followed by softness. Apologies. I'm just under a lot of stress. You're the only one I trust. I didn't mean to snap. And so, I forgave. Over and over and over again. Until I couldn't tell where his needs ended and mine began. I'd spend my nights editing his projects, my weekends cleaning up his messes, my thoughts constantly looping around what more I could do to make him happy. He started calling me family. Said I was his closest person. But I began to notice something chilling. He said the same things to others too. To a new intern one week, to a freelancer the next. And whenever they outlived their usefulness, they'd be gone, just like that. I asked him about one girl, Ritu, a sharp, sweet graphic designer who vanished overnight. She wasn't loyal, he said. She thought she could grow without me. The way he said it scared me. One day, I found a spreadsheet on his laptop, accidentally left open, listing expendable resources. Names. Roles. Notes like replace soon, difficult to manage, too emotional. My name wasn't on the list. But for the first time, I wondered if it was only a matter of time. After that night, something inside me stayed unsettled. I kept thinking about that spreadsheet. The coldness of it. The casual way he had sorted people into usefulness and replaceability. Even though my name wasn't on it, I didn't feel safe. In fact, the absence of my name didn't reassure me, it terrified me more. Maybe I wasn't even a name to him. Maybe I was just part of the furniture. Useful until broken. Silent unless spoken to. But I still showed up the next day. That's the part one hates admitting. That even with all the red flags, the ignored invoices, the way he chipped at my confidence bit by bit, I still stayed. Because a part of me wanted to believe that I mattered to him. That everything I'd poured into that job, into him, wasn't just a means to an end. There was a particular moment I can't forget. We were at a shoot for a brand campaign, and things were going wrong: equipment failure, a missing model, angry clients on the phone. The whole room was buzzing with chaos. And amid all that noise, he turned to me, grabbed my wrist, looked straight into my eyes and said, "You're the only thing keeping this place together." I should have known it was manipulation. I should have seen it for what it was: a line, a tactic. But instead, it hit me like oxygen, like a lifeline being thrown to someone quietly drowning. After the shoot, we sat in his car for a long time. He told me he was proud of me, that if things ever took off the way he dreamed, I'd have a seat at the table. I nodded, but I didn't speak, because deep down, something had already started breaking. I didn't know what to trust anymore: his words, my instincts, or the part of me that still wanted to be chosen. The cracks kept growing. He began assigning me work that was outside my role, handling legal paperwork I didn't understand, managing finances I had no access to verify, even dealing with clients who were threatening lawsuits over unpaid dues. I started feeling like a shield, someone he placed between himself and the consequences of his decisions. One afternoon, a vendor showed up at the office, demanding payment. "You've been ignoring my calls for weeks," the man barked. "Don't send your assistant to lie for you again." I froze. "I didn't lie," I said quietly. The man scoffed. "He said you were handling it, that you made the transfer. So where's the money?" I turned to Arian, expecting him to step in, to clarify. But he didn't. He just stared at me like I was supposed to fix it. "I'll look into it," I said, my voice trembling. After the vendor left, I confronted him. "You told him I made the payment. You know I didn't." He shrugged. "It's easier that way. You're more believable." I felt like the floor had given way beneath me. "But that's not my responsibility. You're getting too emotional," he snapped. "If this is too much for you, maybe you're not ready for this world." And that was the trap. Every time I tried to draw a line, he turned it into a test, a measure of my loyalty. If I pushed back, I was too sensitive. If I questioned him, I was ungrateful. If I looked tired, I was slipping. And so, I stayed quiet. But silence has a cost. I stopped sleeping properly. I woke up with migraines, knots in my stomach, this constant feeling of being stretched too thin. My friendships outside work began to fade. Every phone call from home, every invitation from old classmates, became an inconvenience. I didn't have the energy to explain to anyone why I was always on edge, always half present, always checking my phone like my life depended on it. One night, around midnight, he called. "I need you to come over," he said. "Now. It's urgent." I hesitated. "I'm not feeling well." His voice shifted. Sharper. "Ria, don't do this. You said I could count on you." I was quiet. "I just need you for a few hours. You can crash here if you want." I put on my jacket, grabbed my bag, and left. That night was different. The house was quiet. He offered me coffee, then wine, then started talking about how he felt abandoned by everyone. His investors, his ex, even his parents. "You're the only person who hasn't left me," he said, placing his hand on mine. I pulled it away. He laughed awkwardly. "Relax, I'm just messing with you." But he wasn't. And I knew it. After that night, I started pulling away, slowly, carefully. I stopped replying immediately to texts. I said no to weekend shoots. I started keeping a record of every expense, every email, every voice note where he asked me to do something off the books. He noticed. "You're distant lately," he said one afternoon. "I'm just tired." "Are you seeing someone?" "No." "Then what's going on with you?" I didn't answer. I didn't owe him that anymore. And then came the final straw. I was at my desk, working on a report, when I got an email from a client we'd signed months ago. It was a forward of a legal notice. Failure to deliver services as promised. Breach of contract. Misrepresentation. The worst part? It was signed with my name. He had forged my signature on official documents. My hands went cold. I walked into his office, document in hand. "What is this?" I asked. He looked up lazily. "It's nothing. Just some legal posturing. Don't worry about it. You signed my name." He leaned back, unapologetic. "So? You're my assistant. It's part of the job." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "This isn't just unethical. It's illegal." He stood up, suddenly defensive. "You think you're innocent in all this? You've been in every meeting. You sent every email. You're just as involved." And that's when it hit me. He hadn't just used me. He'd trapped me. Wrapped me in responsibilities I never asked for, then built a web where I couldn't leave without taking the fall. I wasn't just disposable, I was his insurance. That night, I packed every trace of work, my notes, emails, voice recordings, saved files, into a hard drive. I wrote a resignation letter and emailed it at 3:17 a.m. I blocked his number. And I never looked back. When I woke up the next morning, my first thought was that maybe I had overreacted. Maybe I should have waited. Talked to someone. Thought it through. It's strange, isn't it? How your mind clings to doubt when you walk away from something that was never meant to hold you. But then I opened my inbox. There were 12 unread messages from him. The subject lines alone made my stomach twist. "You made a mistake. We need to talk urgently. You're not thinking straight. I can still fix this." And then the last one, "You've disappointed me, Ria." That's the one that hit the hardest. Not because it meant anything, not anymore, but because for so long, those words would have shattered me. I had spent nearly 2 years trying not to disappoint him. Bending myself backwards, swallowing my instincts, working late nights and sacrificing weekends just to earn his approval. Now, I sat there reading his message with a calm I didn't expect. He could be disappointed. He could be angry. He could lie. He could twist everything and try to make me the villain. But I was done. I sent one reply: please direct all future communication through email. I am no longer associated with your company. I request you do not contact me personally again. I hit send and shut my laptop. But the fear didn't disappear overnight. For weeks, I jumped every time my phone vibrated. I flinched at unknown numbers. I had dreams where he was chasing me down hallways, yelling that I had betrayed him. I would wake up in a cold sweat, convinced that I had ruined my life. That he would make sure I never worked again. That he would drag my name through the mud. But none of that happened. Instead, he went quiet. And in that silence, I started to heal. The first few days felt like walking through fog. I was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. Like I had been holding my breath for so long that I didn't know how to breathe normally anymore. I slept for almost 2 days straight. I turned off all notifications. I avoided friends. I ate junk food without guilt and watched mindless TV just to hear laughter again, even if it wasn't mine. Then slowly, I started writing. Not stories. Not articles. Just thoughts. Pages of them. Scribbled in notebooks, typed into my phone, drawn on napkins. I poured out every memory, every lie, every moment where I had swallowed my voice to protect his. At first, the words were angry, jagged, bleeding. But over time, they softened. They became more about me, who I had become, who I was before him, who I could still be. One night, I sat on my balcony, wrapped in a blanket, key in hand, notebook on my lap. I wrote something I didn't expect. He didn't break me. He just showed me where I had been bending too far. It was the first time I felt like I was writing not from pain, but from power. A few weeks later, I got a call from Tanya, a girl who had interned under me briefly. She had left after only a month, saying the environment was not a good fit. At the time, I didn't understand why. I thought she wasn't tough enough. But now, I knew better. I heard you left, she said cautiously. I did, I replied. It was overdue. I'm really glad, she said. I used to worry about you. You looked drained. That word stayed with me, drained. Not overwhelmed. Not overworked. Drained. That's what he had done. He hadn't just taken my time or effort. He had drained my energy, my peace, my sense of self-worth. And now, for the first time in months, I was starting to refill those parts of me. It wasn't easy. There were days I missed the structure, the adrenaline, the rush of feeling important. There were days I questioned if I had thrown away my one big opportunity. But then I'd remind myself opportunities that require you to shrink are not opportunities. They're cages. I started freelancing. Small projects at first, a logo for a friend's bakery, some copywriting for a student magazine, social media content for a nonprofit. The money was modest, but the feeling of doing honest, respectful work, that was priceless. I also reconnected with people I had pushed away. My childhood friend Sonia, my cousin Kabir, even my mom, who had always sensed something was wrong but didn't know how to ask. One evening, over dinner, she looked at me and said, "You're laughing more lately." I didn't realize how rare my laugh had become. And then came a message that I didn't expect. It was from a journalist. She said she was doing a piece on toxic work environments in startups. She had heard about Arian's company from a few sources and wanted to talk off the record. She assured me I could stay anonymous. No pressure. Just a conversation. At first, I panicked. My instinct screamed, "Stay silent." What if he found out? What if he retaliated? What if no one believed me? But then I remembered the spreadsheet, the fake signature, the unpaid dues. The nights I cried into my pillow, convincing myself that pain was part of success. So I said yes. We spoke for 3 hours. I told her everything. Not to ruin him. Not to take revenge. But because I knew there were other Rias out there, quiet, loyal, afraid, and maybe, just maybe, they'd feel less alone if someone spoke up. The article went live 2 weeks later. It didn't name me. But anyone who knew, knew. It made waves. Not just because of the accusations, but because of how common the story was. Other ex-employees came forward. Clients too. Anonymous forums lit up. Some defended him. Many didn't. I watched it all unfold with a strange sense of detachment. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't gloating. I was just done. One day, as I walked into a cafe to meet a new client, the barista smiled at me and said, "Hey, I loved what you wrote. You're really brave." I blinked. What I wrote? The article. "You were in that, right?" Or, "Sorry if I'm wrong." "No, you're not wrong." And for the first time, I said it out loud. That was me. That was me. I don't know what I expected when I said it. Maybe a pause. Maybe judgment. Maybe curiosity. But what I got was something gentler. The barista simply nodded and said, "I'm glad you got out." That was it. No dramatic applause, no tears, no lecture, just quiet acknowledgement. And somehow, that was what I needed most. I didn't want to be seen as a victim anymore. I didn't want pity. I just wanted someone to recognize that I had survived something and kept going. As the weeks passed, the noise around Arian's company began to fade. People moved on to new headlines. Some of his clients dropped him. Others stayed. A few public apologies were issued, vague, carefully worded, probably written by lawyers. But the damage was done. His image had cracked. And unlike before, this time he couldn't control the narrative. I thought I'd feel relief. Or satisfaction. Maybe even a bit of justice. But what I actually felt was space. Space where fear used to live. Space where I used to watch my phone constantly, waiting for the next demand, the next guilt trip, the next moment I'd be asked to prove my loyalty again. Now, that space was mine. I could fill it with anything I wanted. Peace, rest, silence, possibility. I moved into a small apartment not far from where I grew up. Nothing fancy. Just a one-bedroom with soft lighting and plants I still forget to water. But it's mine. Every corner of it feels like healing. I painted the walls myself. Picked out each cushion, each curtain. For the first time, I didn't ask anyone if they liked it. I didn't wait for someone to approve my taste. I just chose what made me feel safe. Work started picking up too. Slowly but steadily. Word spread. People referred me. Former clients from my old job reached out, not to gossip, but to offer support. You always handled things with professionalism, one of them said. We'd love to work with you directly. And so, without realizing it, I became self-employed. I created a tiny brand. Got a website up. Made business cards I still haven't handed out. But the moment I saw my name on that clean, simple design, Ria Kapoor, creative consultant, I smiled. Not because it made me rich. Not because it came with fancy perks. But because it felt like freedom. Real, hard-earned, unglamorous freedom. I also started therapy. It wasn't something I had planned. My friend Sonia nudged me toward it after I broke down over a missed deadline, not because of the deadline itself, but because it reminded me of how I used to work through migraines and still get called lazy. I realized I had been holding on to so many internalized stories about what it meant to be valuable, about how love must be earned through labor, about how silence equals strength. In therapy, I said things I had never said out loud. Like how I felt complicit in my own mistreatment. How I thought being needed was the same as being loved. How I missed him sometimes, not him as a person, but the version of me who believed I was finally being seen. My therapist didn't judge. She listened. Asked gentle questions. Held space for every contradiction. Week by week, I began to understand that what happened wasn't my fault. That manipulation often looks like attention. That being chosen by someone broken doesn't mean you're special. It just means you were convenient. And still, that didn't make me weak. It made me human. One evening, I came across an old photo. It was taken during the early days of the job, me standing next to Arian, both of us smiling at some event, shoulders slightly touching. I remember feeling so proud that day. So full of hope. So certain I was becoming someone. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I quietly put it away. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to erase the past. But because I no longer needed to hold on to it. I had other photos now. Ones of me hiking with friends I trust. Me laughing with my mother in the kitchen. Me lying on the floor of my apartment with music playing and no reason to rush anywhere. I also started writing again. And every time I read those words, I remembered how long I had once waited for someone to tell me the same. One day, While setting up for a client workshop, I looked around the room, a small group of freelancers, designers, and writers all brainstorming around a whiteboard. There was energy in the room. Laughter. Ideas bouncing like light. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't just survive him. I outgrew him. He had once made me feel like he was my entire world. Like I owed him everything. Like I wouldn't be anything without him. And yet here I was, thriving. Without him. Because people like him don't build you. They bind you. They offer a mirror filled with promises and then punish you for believing in your reflection. But once you walk away, once you choose yourself, once you stop begging to be seen, the mirror shatters. And what's left is clearer than any illusion. Your own self. Whole. Wiser. Worthy. Now, whenever I speak to young women starting their careers, I tell them this: don't confuse charisma with character. Don't trade your peace for proximity to power. Don't wait until someone breaks you to prove that you were whole to begin with. If it costs your sanity, it's too expensive. If it demands silence, it's not worth your voice. If it uses your heart only to fuel someone else's ego, it's not love. It's theft. My story didn't end the way I thought it would. It didn't end with applause, or revenge, or grand closure. It ended in a quiet room, with me choosing to live differently, to work without fear, to rest without guilt, to love without shrinking.